So I think we're live.
We are
I
live.
think we are live. We're trying to figure this out.
We're live and we're sitting here just doing nothing.
We're chatting, trying to figure out what we're doing. So
hello, Facebook.
yes, hello.
We are here tonight to talk about, well, homeownership in general. Maybe bust some myths that, oh, you can never buy a home because the news tells you you can never buy a home. And I actually like to talk some tax strategies also. And we've got the comments here. So
If you have questions,
tech advisor.
I don't know about that. If you have questions, type them in the comments and we'll try to answer them. So I'm Mackenzie Schmidt. I'm a realtor with Exit Realty.
And I'm Stephanie Fields. I'm a loan officer with Mortgage Investors Group.
Yes. I was trying to find it on your page.
It's on my business page.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay.
So there it is. Okay. Just to see
us. Okay. We are officially on now and want to speak. I guess I want to speak for just a minute to first-time home buyers who potentially think you can't buy, you don't have any money. Not having money is not entirely a holdback. There are down payment assistance programs. There's potential for sellers to make concessions and maybe help you with some of the closing costs. There's limits to that, of course. But here in tax season, also, just a good reminder that one of the benefits of tax refunds is those are acceptable sources of funds to use towards your down payment closing costs. So, some folks with a lot of credits, childcare and things, do usually get some pretty good tax credits and tax refunds. So if that's something that's in your future, you've not already gotten it, not already spent it, my tax refund spent. I'm just being real honest. That's potential for acceptable use of funds. So that's one thing to keep in mind.
Right. But I think
taxes
too key is, talking with someone like yourself and getting a plan, because it may be that it's better to use that money to pay down some debt potentially or something along those lines. So, talk to someone before you decide what you're going to do with your tax refund, and what better way to use a tax refund since you overpaid. It's not just the government giving you free money.
They're giving you your money.
They're giving you your money back. But what a better way to use that than putting it towards a home that you're going to build equity and help build wealth in the future, so you can see it really work for you in the future too. So,
and just thinking, do we think our sound is working?
I don't know. Yes,
it is working.
It is working.
All right. And then that just probably sidetracked me from what I was thinking. Go ahead.
So I was just going to say, I did want to speak a little bit to what you're saying about, I've heard a lot in the news, or I've seen a lot of people post on Facebook about how I'm never going to be able to buy a house and things are so expensive. And yes, things are so expensive these days with inflation, but I do believe that you can still buy a house. You have to have a plan.
Right.
That's the key, is a plan. You can't just wake up one morning and be like, I'm going to buy a house today. Got to have a plan. So you want to speak a little bit about, some planning stuff that might.
Absolutely. You do need a strategy. And one of the things Mackenzie brought up a good point, that tax refund, there are some cases in which it can be better applied to debt. If you can eliminate something entirely that's dragging your debt to income ratio down, then that's a good way. But that part of that strategy is looking at it potentially as a long game. Hopefully not a super long game to buy your first house, but it can take a while if your credit's taking some hits, if you don't have a lot of money saved up. You got to kind of look at what that picture is, know what you're going to be in for.
Right.
If you think you need to be in $300,000 price range because you've looked at some homes and they seem to meet your needs, then we might have to work backwards into that.
Right.
You know, if
Right.
you can afford 220 now, do you look at homes for 220? You know, do some renovations. There are
Mhm.
renovation loan products that are available. So you build that strategy, you find out what you can do, and then work with Mackenzie and or a favorite realtor, myself, favorite lender,
Mhm.
to build the next steps of what you need to do, what's going to improve your picture.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And don't get discouraged if you talk to, a lender and they're like, we have some work to do, because it's okay, you know.
People do take that very hard. They take it very much to heart, and
Right.
don't. It's, you're not in a good spot now. Um,
Yeah.
Everybody from time to time, there are so many people that are not in a spot to buy a home at different points during their life, but it's, you figure out the timing, figure out the strategy.
Right. Yeah. So
Good question.
do not get discouraged by that comment. And, um, it's okay. You just work the plan and keep the long term goal in mind, because those who own homes at the end or retirement age have more wealth than those who don't. And
Much
so,
higher net worth.
yeah, so I'm a firm believer in that real estate is a great way to build wealth.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it doesn't matter, where you start. Maybe you have to start at something like a 2 bedroom
Yeah.
home, something that's smaller, but you get in that house, you start to build that equity. In a few years, you sell, take the equity you built, move up in a house, and you kind of keep that going for until you get the house that you really want. So,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe you think you want this house and you actually don't ever have to get there because you find the house that you love. And
Right.
so,
Right.
but most people are not like past generations, and they move, I think it's 12 times is the average now in their lifetime. And so
Mm.
the likelihood that the first home that you purchase is the only home you purchase is not very high. So don't look at it as this is my only chance to buy a house I love. That's not likely true.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's lots of
Being willing to start a little smaller,
yeah.
which plays into the building wealth
Mm-hmm.
plan very well. You start with that first home. You start with a starter home, what they call a starter home. Those are hard to find these days.
Yeah.
But smaller home, maybe it's a townhome, maybe it's just a 2 bedroom, maybe you have a roommate.
Yeah.
But that home can become a rental home,
Yes.
and then you purchase another primary residence, and that first home becomes a bang up tax deduction.
That's true.
So when we talk about home ownership, taxes, building wealth, it's all intertwined.
It is. It is.
So some people aren't cut out for thinking in terms of
Yeah.
investment. They're like, I need one house right now.
Right.
And when I outgrow that house, I'm going to get this house and I'm going to be done with that house. But
Right.
there are a lot of ways to, if you've got that long range vision and
Yeah.
kind of want to seriously get out of the working world, real estate's a great way to do it.
It absolutely is. Yes. And, I'm always surprised too with people who kind of start with that first home, and it seems like things just kind of change a little bit for them. I had a client I worked with last year, first time home buyer, and she called me a few months ago and she's like, "You're never going to believe it. I got a $10,000 raise at work." And, so I was just like, wow, that's unbelievable. It's just like sometimes, and I'm not saying that necessarily it's the home ownership that has anything to do with it, but I think it kind of puts things in a different perspective, maybe. And I don't know, good things can follow. But you do need to be prepared for, once you buy a home, you are in charge of maintaining it.
Everything.
And, you're not going to have to be able to call the landlord to come fix the water heater that busted. I heard from an agent today, the buyer went in to do the final walkthrough. Water heater had busted in the garage. So the homeowner has to fix it before they go to closing.
Yeah.
So you are responsible for those things. So you do have to be prepared for that. But that's one reason why we do inspections too, to hopefully help limit some of those initial
Yeah. But
costs.
that
Don't
can
have,
happen
but
at any
it
time.
can happen at any time. It doesn't
Anytime.
matter. Something works perfect one day, and the next day it
Yeah.
breaks, and it is what it is. So
Yeah.
you have to be prepared, and that's something that you take into account when you're looking at the debt to income and those sort of things, and you're approving someone for a mortgage, correct?
Yeah.
Because
Well, we can improve, the debt to income ratio is the limit. And we think that outside of that money, you're kind of budgeting it. So it
well,
really, you
yes,
get it in the form of a lecture from me. Like, just because you can spend
yeah,
$400,000 doesn't mean you should.
right,
If you've never owned a home, you don't think about all of the extra cleaning supplies and the maintenance issues and the yard, and what if you need yard tools, and so there's expenses going in. So when somebody comes to me, it's like, I got $10,000, I want to put it down towards the house. How about you put 6,000 in to the house investment, and save a little money, because
yeah,
I don't want to send anybody in house poor.
no.
And then I'm like, so there's going to be monthly expenses too.
Right, right.
I may advise too much.
Yeah, well, I mean, and there's also those little things that maybe we forget about, like you just setting up electricity. Usually you have to pay a fee or something,
Deposits.
deposit. And so those things can add up when you've got water and electricity, and you might have gas and trash and internet and
Mhm.
whatever else, and you're like a few $100s in already. And
Yeah, yeah. So it is a big picture. Homeownership is not for everybody, honestly.
no.
It really isn't. But to talk on taxes for
Yes,
1 minute, can I
yes,
just?
absolutely.
We are not tax
No,
professionals. I'm not a tax
no,
professional.
absolutely not.
However, there's some things to think about. Kind of speaking to early first time home buyers, a lot of people who don't own a home are probably not itemizing or taking deductions or
Yes.
whatever. So the standard deduction is sometimes sufficient. But if you own a home, and especially in that first year, questions to be prepared for when you get ready to do taxes is, did I pay any interest and discount points up front? All of those can be claimed in that first year. Comes in especially handy, like if you're also tithing or giving to a school or donating to Goodwill and keeping those receipts. The more that you can kind of come up with deductions, if you can beat that standard deduction, you're doing good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think my standard deduction was like 12.8 this
Yeah.
year. So home ownership can help you get past that. Um, there are no breaks on home equity lines of credit. So if you need some cash out of your house and you want to look at a home equity line of credit, that's not going to qualify. But if you did a refinance, it would. Taxes can be generally deducted. And for military, for our heroes, thank you. They may receive some non-taxable housing allowance, but they can still deduct real estate taxes and home mortgage interest. There's also some energy credits if you upgrade windows, do a new roof, rewrap your house, anything that increases the energy efficiency. Again, ask your tax preparer, but there's a lot of people that may not know that, so it's a good little benefit to throw out there.
Yes, absolutely.
There is actually a tax document on irs.gov. It's called Publication 530. Some pretty dry reading.
If you're bored one night
But
and you want to go to sleep quickly, it might be a good one to check out.
it might get a question or two answered that you didn't know you had. But yeah, dry document. It's only 24 pages,
Only,
so
okay.
it's a thing to scroll through. I guess it
Yeah.
was pretty interesting. But
Yeah. So most people might not say that.
that's true. That's true. Yeah. Become a mortgage lender. People tell you to read guidelines.
Oh, those are fun. Yes.
FHA is 1,500 pages, and it's not fun.
No.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Anyway.
it's ever changing.
And then kind of going a little bit further on tax benefits of homes. Once you get into that second home or that investment property and you have another primary resident, those are some really good opportunities to kind of defer taxes, kick them down the road, ultimately put them back into put some equity back into a primary residence. So there's several benefits there. One was depreciation that was pretty interesting. Again, please ask tax
Yes, please talk
professionals.
to your tax professional.
But I thought these were interesting. Depreciation of an investment property. They kind of shelf life a home. The IRS deems it 27.5 years.
Okay.
So you can do 1/27th of that. And then there's the 1031 exchange.
Yes.
Where you kind of just,
if you have money you want to invest into an investment property, you
Yeah.
can.
you can really defer some capital gains taxes on
Right,
that.
yeah.
So
There's some nuances to that. You do have to like identify properties. And
similar.
like you have to identify a list of properties that you might use, and you have to use the money within a certain, I think it's like 6 months time period as well. So again, consult with your tax professional, but it is, you know, it does have like a time limit on it. It's not just I can sit here and wait forever to
Right.
use this money on that. But yes, it is a good option.
Right. And ultimately can save some money. But those are cases of, kind of thinking down the road. If you have a little bit of an investment mindset, but you've not bought your first home yet, so find the strategy to get that first home.
Yeah, maybe it's, I mean, you said
Next step,
townhome. Maybe
you find that opportunity to, can you rent that out for more than your mortgage? Move on to your next home. So it's really a great way to build wealth.
Or maybe it's something like a duplex, and you live in one side and you rent out the other side.
Love that. I'm trying to talk somebody into doing that.
Yeah, I was talking to someone today about that. So, I mean, there's lots of options, and I think we just have to think about things a little bit different.
Strategic
Yes.
planning. Gotta go for the goals.
Yes.
Make some goals.
The goals. And you're going to have to probably sacrifice some things. You're probably not going to be able to drive the brand new, car, but that's okay.
Yeah, if you come in here with an $800-900 car payment, I'm gonna be. Let's talk when you refinance.
Yeah,
I mean, it is choosing priorities, I suppose. But
yeah.
And just my plug: if you're in the process of buying a house, do not go buy a car.
Do not go buy a car
or furniture.
Yes, don't go get the furniture.
Anything on credit that cannot be reminded enough. That's just
and
bad form.
Yeah, and you need to wait a little bit after you buy the house too to do stuff probably too. So don't do those things. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny. I worked with someone last year that was like, "Hey, I'm about to go buy a new car," and I'm like, "Please don't, don't do that."
Just last week, a client, they were getting ready to kind of finalize their application and asked the question, my wife's expecting and we're thinking we need an SUV. So will that mess anything up? It will. It absolutely will. Let's get everything kind of shaken out, see where all the numbers land. Don't do that debt for right now. And then they decided they needed the car instead. So they're just going to hold off on the house.
At least they asked, I guess.
Baby will be safe.
Yes.
Baby will be safer because I think she was in a little bitty car. So.
Gotcha. Well, that's good. And, babies don't need a lot of room at first anyway, right? So they can wait maybe a little bit. Yeah. When they start crawling, well, maybe not a lot of room when they start crawling either because they're easier to keep up with.
That's when they start crawling and walking, and you gotta either contain them or get more space.
Yeah. So anyway,
so are we seeing any no comments?
No comments yet. So if you have any, just let us know. So again, home ownership.
Anything else?
What is the biggest piece of advice you would give someone who is thinking about buying a home?
Find out what your financial picture looks like. Talk to me. let's do a 15, 20-minute phone consultation. There's no pressure. I don't pull credit
Mhm.
unless it sounds like it could work. Or if your credit's shaky
Mhm.
and need some advice, then it's really about finding out where you stand, um, getting that initial consultation.
Yes.
Get that. Don't be afraid of that. I think
No.
people may feel vulnerable, they may feel judged.
Embarrassed.
Just that's
It's
that's
okay.
a great piece of advice. And just in life in general, it's hard to save any money right now.
Mhm.
But if you can stick $5, transfer it over to a savings account every time you get paid, transfer $10 over so that you never see it. Just, you
Yeah.
know, pay yourself a little
Mhm.
bit, whatever you can along the way, and get that financial picture.
Yes. So something I hear a lot is, well, I pay X number of dollars in rent every month, but I only am approved to buy this number, so, which is usually less than the rent. Can you speak a little bit to why that might be? I think there's a great meme we talked about that's going around. It's like, what is it?
Something about the mortgage company tells me I can't afford $1,500 a month, so instead I pay 2,000 in rent.
Yes,
I think
yes,
that's
yes.
the picture that it is, and that's true. Rental places are not generally checking your debt to income ratio.
Right.
You've got a job. I
They'll,
think they do check your debt to income ratio, but it's super generous. I don't know what the
yeah, a
exact
lot of
figure is.
them today, when I've worked with people helping them find a rental, it's usually like they want to see 3 times your rent income. Like they want your income to be 3 times the rent, is what I hear a lot from rentals. So that's generally kind of, and then they'll check your credit score, and as if it's like 600 or above, they're usually like, okay,
Okay.
that's what
Okay.
I've seen. So,
So yeah, it's and it's ratio. They
mhm,
may be looking at a third of income, but they're not looking at all your other debts
right.
as well. We're looking at all your debts. So it's your housing plus everything else. A good gauge is that shouldn't be more than 45%. So housing payment plus any car payments you have, any credit cards you have, any student loans you have, any monthly obligations that you have. So it becomes a debt to income ratio thing. And then back to, those ratios are in place for a pretty good reason.
Mm-hmm.
There are going to be other expenses.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we put caps on it. Rental places aren't looking at your income. And in this market, affordability has taken a hit.
Mm-hmm.
Home prices skyrocketed, I think, in a short amount of time. So it's, kind of something you got to work into. If you think you're going to end up having to pay more for a mortgage, then there's that goal setting session there, the
Yes.
strategy.
Yeah. Maybe you figure out a way to put a portion of the difference into a savings account to help you towards the down payment or closing costs and
Mm-hmm.
um, that sort of thing. So, yeah. So they look at more than your rental company or your landlord looks at. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's different. I know it's a little bit difficult to understand sometimes and doesn't make sense, but that is what they're looking at when they are reviewing your history. So, anyway, just so
Yeah.
you know, it's not as black and white as the internet would make you believe.
Nothing's ever as black and white. A lot of times when people ask me a question, the answer is, well, it depends. And it always depends on 4 or 5 different factors. But that, in a nutshell, that's what's driving the, you don't qualify for as much rent as you pay.
Right, right. And, ultimately that's good because it's going to help you in the long run. As you said earlier, we don't want to see anyone get into a house and be house poor and they can't make the payment and
Mm-hmm.
they, have to either sell it, do a short sale or foreclosure or something like that. So we don't want that. We want you to build that equity
Mm-hmm.
and that wealth moving forward. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we want to make sure. and take care of you. So that's what we ultimately want to do. That's our responsibility as well. So,
Yeah. We want clients for life,
right.
buy that first house, second,
Hmm.
whatever happens, the move up house, the downsize house. So,
Yeah, there's
and we don't want you mad
right.
because,
Yeah.
oh, why did they let me take this huge house payment on?
Yes, exactly. There's a lot of, I heard there's a lot of boomers and stuff going to be downsizing soon. So, I don't know, over the next like 10 years or so.
Mm,
So, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out
yeah.
in the market. So, um, what other advice do you have? Any other tips?
Pay your bills on time. Just pay your bills on time.
Yes.
I mean, it's really that simple. When people ask, well, what can I do to get my credit up? It depends
Mm-hmm.
on how bad your credit is, what made it bad. Um, but a little bit of time and making sure everything is paid on time is the number one way to keep your credit good. It's keep your credit good.
How, so if someone reached out and they needed to do a little bit of work and, maybe it's paying their bills on time and stuff like that, how long does that take to show up on the credit to make the impact that you need it to make on the credit?
Again, that depends on what it was, how
Okay.
old it was, how far behind it was, and largely how many times it was later than 30 days.
Okay.
So it's too many
Again,
factors.
need to talk to someone. So you were talking about the cap is usually around 45% on debt to income.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned student loans, credit cards, car payments. I think there were some changes a few years ago about medical debt.
There were,
And I know people have that, and sometimes maybe they think that that will prevent them from buying a home. So maybe you could just speak to that a little bit.
actually, if it is a medical collections under $2,000, FHA doesn't even require that it be paid off or explained.
Okay.
Medical debts are a lot less detrimental to your credit than they've ever been.
Okay.
So we don't even look at them in some certain situations.
Okay. And what about student loans? Do they?
Student loans, we still have to count, even
Okay.
if they're in a deferred payment status, which a lot still are.
Mm-hmm.
We still have to count at a minimum 0.5% of that balance
Okay.
monthly. For the first time buyer loans for Fannie Mae products, it's actually 1%.
Okay.
So if you've got a loan balance of $3,700, we have to count 1% of that against you, which I think is $37. Because I'm bad at math in my head. So yeah, we have to count a little bit of that, unless there's a documentation saying that it's being forgiven, been forgiven, something like that.
Okay. Right. Gotcha. So if they were on, I know there's like a few plans, I think, for teachers and different things that they're in the process of getting it forgiven.
If it's gonna be forgiven, we
With,
wait.
okay. Gotcha.
We want to see it forgiven,
Gone.
unless they've got room in their debt to income ratio. Get the documentation that there will be no payments going forward. And another thing some people are doing is IRB, income reduction, or IBR, income based reduction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So somebody a couple of months ago had $168,000 worth of student loans. And so the payment on that, I had to count like over $800 against her. But the IBR program, go ahead, just lock it in. I think it was 157 or $165 a month, something like that. So it really knocked down that monthly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So again, talk to a lender. Don't just sit back and wait.
Yeah, because not all of it's really intuitive.
No.
I mean, some of the things you would think are kind of counterintuitive, like what would make for good things happening on my credit. Paying off old stuff, not necessarily a good thing.
No.
So have that consultation
Right.
is the whole thing.
And the other thing I will say, if you want to speak to, is um, those Credit Karma company types are not always accurate. So don't be surprised if you come in and speak with Stephanie and
Your credit's
she's
30 points
yeah,
lower than
she's
you
like,
thought.
that's not your credit.
Yeah.
So if you want to speak a little bit to why that is, but he will
Excellent
get upset
point.
about that.
They really do, because I've seen some big differences,
Yeah.
but you may see 700-ish. I may see 650. They're just scored on a little bit more stringent model because we're taking all three of them. We're not
Right.
just looking at Experian one time. So we're looking at all three of them, and we're also looking at significant amounts of money being lent.
Right. Right.
So we're a little more strict. It's going to be a little bit lower. It may be right on the money. I've seen that happen too, but don't be surprised.
Don't be surprised.
Thanks
for
bringing that up.
Don't be upset. I've seen that happen a few times, and it's just, they've worked hard. Usually they've worked really hard to try to get the credit up to where they want it to be. They've checked and they're like, okay, I've finally reached this number. They've found maybe somewhere online. They haven't ever spoken to a lender.
Yeah.
And they saw it on their whatever app they're using to check their credit. And then they talk to someone and they find out it's lower and they're just devastated. So
Yeah.
don't, it's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah. You'll get there still. So don't worry about it. And don't be surprised. So,
It will all be okay.
yes, it'll all be okay.
We'll get you through it.
Yes. And that's the key. I think that's the biggest key, is working with somebody who you're comfortable with. And you can have those conversations with it. You're not, worried about what they're going to say or whatever. You want to be comfortable, and that's with an agent or a lender.
Right.
And that, sometimes we do have to have hard conversations. I spoke with someone recently and they were like, we were only approved for like 180,000. And I'm like, that unfortunately in today's market, that's going to be really hard. And so you have to kind of set those expectations of, maybe we can't live in downtown Nashville. Maybe we have to move out a little bit because we aren't approved for as much as we would like. And that's okay. And there's programs you can use if you are moved out that might not be available if you're living in the city too. So it's okay. But I think it's really important to find somebody that you can talk to and are comfortable working with. And that's the biggest thing. So whether it's me, Stephanie, or someone else, that's make sure that you're comfortable
100%. Yeah.
And you don't feel,
you want to feel like you can say anything.
Right.
Because
it's your biggest investment,
and
right?
It does not look like
purchase.
HGTV,
y'all. No, it doesn't.
It
doesn't look like HGTV. That's obviously for TV. And so it's, likely not going to be that simple. You're not just going to pick up the phone, make a call to a lender and be like, okay, you're approved for $500,000 and, or, $800,000, go find the house that you want. That's not likely.
We wish it worked that way.
We wish it did, yes, but it's not likely to happen.
Right.
And the likelihood that the first house you look at is the house you buy is not likely. And, sharing details and different things helps her and myself. When I'm looking for homes and I know those things about you, it helps me to find a house that fits better. And it's also, we start looking at homes and sometimes people, okay, that'll work and that'll work. But I can step back from a different perspective and say, are you sure? Because you told me that this was really important to you. Are you sure you want to give that up? And I can just ask that question or kind of keep you, if you say these three things are my main things, like I can't do without those, but then I see you start to move away from that, I can are you sure you
Mhm.
want to do that? This is not what you told me. Like, I can speak to that and kind of keep you on task a little bit with your search, because sometimes we can get frustrated and bogged down with it.
It's an emotional process too.
And it's emotional, and especially if maybe you've put in an offer or two and you didn't get the house and whatnot. You can just start to, I've seen it happen, settle a little bit. Well, I just want a house. So you start to kind of, well, that it's okay. This
Yeah.
is not what I really wanted, but it's okay. It's a house. We can get it. And I would just say, don't do that unless there's some other circumstances. A lot of people don't like to hear it, but I always am like, when it's gonna happen, it will happen.
Mhm.
And I had a conversation with somebody. I wasn't their agent. I was just talking to them, and they said they had been looking for 2 years. And I spoke to them about 3 weeks ago, and I was like, they're like, I just don't think we're ever going to find anything. And I spoke with them last week, and they were like, we got a house.
We found
And I
it.
was like,
Oh,
told you,
good.
it's going to happen. Like it, and people don't like to hear that, but it's true. Like, I've seen it happen so many times that you think we're never going to find it or whatnot.
Yeah.
And so don't get discouraged.
It comes
Stay in
along.
there. It comes along.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it may be 50 houses. I've shown 50 houses, and we put in a few offers and it didn't work out. And then we had one, and we put in an offer. I thought we were going to get it. They had multiples. We ended up not getting it, but I was like, hey, can we be a backup? Okay. She called me about 2 weeks later. This one isn't working. You still want this house?
Mm.
Ended up, they got the house.
Yay.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's, those stories are always fun, and
Love
it will happen. And
Yeah.
we want you to succeed. I want you to succeed. She wants you to succeed. Everybody
Yeah.
wants you to get the house. So we're not here to prohibit that. We're just here to help you in that process and make it.
But set some realistic expectations
Yes.
too, because it does not look like HGTV.
It does not. No. And some people are like, I saw somebody on Facebook posting, and they're like, yeah, we're looking at buying a house in 450, and we like the lake, and everybody just, you're never going to get a house on the lake for 450.
They're brutal on some of those.
They are.
Yeah.
But yeah, just have those.
Cheer each other on.
Yeah.
Like, I hope you find
I
a
hope
house.
you find
I hope
that
you find that
diamond, and you're able to get it. You never know. I mean, crazy things happen sometimes.
Crazy things happen.
You never know. So anyway. But.
Any other things you want to bring up?
We're
35 minutes in.
Yeah.
No
30,
comments.
No comments. But I don't know. Anything else you have to talk about? Are there any changes that you all are expecting? I guess we can speak maybe a little bit about rates. I know that has, at the beginning of the year, that had been a really hot topic around the internet and in real estate land, and I know mortgage land.
It's a hot topic everywhere, and the news is blah blah, doom gloom. No buying houses. The rates are a bit difficult to speak to because they've not behaved and done as expected for a while now. At the end of the year, it was like, oh, beginning of 2024 is going to be so great. There's going to be some drops. And there was a little bit of a drop at the end of last year.
Yes.
It was enough to make everybody really hopeful.
Yeah. We all were sitting on the edge of our seats.
Went right back up by like January 12th.
Yeah, because we got that report about inflation was higher and stuff like that. So it really kind of put a downer on everything.
Yeah. So they do still continually modify the predictions. The latest one I've heard is June to July, potentially a drop. It's so hard to predict in some ways. There's one collection of economists, I think there's 11, and the last I read, the predictions were 43% thought they were gonna go up.
Yes, I heard that.
18% thought they were going to stay the same, and 43% thought they were going to go down. So it really is kind of a waiting game at this point. I really am not expecting the Fed to do anything until June.
I would agree.
We'll see. We're hoping for a little bit of an ease up in the next couple of weeks, but that's not getting us to anything that was lower than
Not
the end of
significant.
last year. It's
No.
not significant yet. But my argument is still the interest rates are not the thing that you should wait for. The interest rates are not the only thing here, and everybody's got it in their head. I'm waiting for the rates to go down.
Yes.
Well, there's potential for home prices to maybe slide a little bit. That's where we would also love to see some people kind of back off of that, but there's just not enough demand now. So as long as those home prices are going up,
Yeah.
that's where the whammy is. I would much rather pay a little bit of higher interest on a temporary basis than to know I paid 40 grand too much for the house.
Right. And so
yeah,
that's what I'll speak to that because, we really have an inventory issue. Is one reason why the prices are so high is because, we just don't have enough homes for people moving to this area. So my encouragement, as you said, is if you can buy now, I would do it because if rates drop, they're estimating that if they drop even 0.5%, you're looking at 1 million people flooding the market because everybody's been waiting. And what's going to happen? We're going to see a repeat of what happened during 2020, 2021. We still don't have the inventory. Prices are going to go back up. You're going to be in multiple offers. You're not going to get, you're going to have to put in offers on 10 houses. You still may not get a house. You're going to be paying over asking price. And so my encouragement would be if you can buy now, buy, because you may end up, because you just want to get a house that you don't even like or realize you don't like or doesn't work for you later as well. So I would, I know the rate seems high. Historically, it's not high, but we've been used to, what was it, a decade of 3-4%. And so we were spoiled by that, and so
it was, I'm actually getting ready to do a refinance, and I'm looking at a 6.375 on her existing loan, which was in 2018.
Okay.
So
I mean, it was several years.
2019 they started sliding way down, but they've definitely been under 7 for a long time. Yeah. That 3, they should have never been there.
No.
They really should have never been there.
No, they should have never been there. And I don't know that we'll ever see that again. So if you're waiting for 3, you probably just going to be waiting for a long, ever. I don't know that we'll ever see that again.
We are very sorry for your plans and intentions. And the flip side, there's another negative effect of that overpaying for a house. A realtor friend of mine called me recently, kind of asking some questions about assumable loans, what restrictions were on maybe renting a property with an FHA loan, because they bought in September 2022 when there was a great frenzy. People were emotionally buying, overpaying.
Yes.
And here we are, not quite 2 years down the road, year and a half-ish, and they just don't have enough equity.
Right.
They don't have enough equity. Like, if they sell right now, they would bring some money to closing.
Right. Right. And you don't want that. You want to build wealth, not go backwards.
Yeah.
And so
overpaying for the house is a longer term hit.
Right.
Then the interest rates aren't where I want them to be.
Right. Yeah. Because you can refinance later when they do go down. And I do expect them to go down. I don't know to what level, but I do.
Yeah.
I think, hopefully. I think you do too. So we'll see what the Fed does. I don't know. I'm hearing, I think probably June or July too, before we see any movement at all.
I'm finally
fall
admitting
maybe,
that's what
fall may be like a crazy time in the housing industry. So,
and they're not expecting them to drop significantly this year at all. So a little bit of a drop, good, good.
What do you
That
consider a little bit of a drop?
they're not going to get less than 6 this year.
Mhm.
I don't think.
That's what I'd kind of heard.
Yeah.
6 is potentially maybe
And,
like a
and,
5, 9,
and I
9
think
or
they might be
something.
like, I think they might be like, mid sixes even. I don't think they're going to drop significantly. I had great hopes, but they're getting dashed daily.
Yes, yes. But, we'll see what happens. If we knew, we would be super wealthy, right?
Yeah, we'd be
So,
buying lottery tickets.
yeah, if
'cause we know the
anyone
numbers.
tells you they know what's going to happen, you should probably go the other direction because they really don't know what's going to happen.
I like to say my crystal ball says made in China.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, it doesn't. Mine doesn't work that way either. So, but I do believe if they go down, that you're going to see
Yeah.
just
Nobody wants them to go down rapidly.
No.
We're in a mess if they go down rapidly.
right. So, anyway, but
Yeah. Okay.
well, if we don't have any questions, we will. I guess we can wrap this up. And
Okay.
if you have any questions after the fact, feel free to leave comments, and we'll check them and answer them,
Or send either of us a message.
Yep, send us a message. We'd love to just speak with you, and no commitment. You don't have to make a commitment to me, and we'll just be happy to answer questions.
And I'm afraid of commitment, so.
So anyway, just reach out. We'd love to chat with you about any questions that you have or concerns or thoughts. And
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for chatting and interviewing.
Yes.
All right. Thanks for spending some time or watching this later.
Have a good rest of your day.
If you end this live video, you'll be